people, they say things like, I just want more clients. Like if I just had more clients, my business would feel so much better. But what we're actually craving is we're craving more security or more certainty. And so then we can start to ask ourselves a different question, which is how do I create more certainty and more security in my business or in my life? It's not the vehicle that we actually want. What we want is the underlying emotion. If we constantly chase the vehicles, we often get the vehicle, but we still don't get the emotion. One of the exercises that I often get people to do when they come to me and they say, I don't have the stability, or I'm feeling like I just need more clients, or I just need more money, or if I could just reach this financial goal, is welcome to the Creative Courage Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Essam, and this podcast is all about building a creative business that gives you more freedom, fulfillment, and financial stability. And on the second point, in today's episode, I want to talk about something that could change how you feel about your life and business. Now, you might be completely happy with your life and business, but for most of us, there's somewhere where we're not 100% happy. There's either a kind of feeling that we want more, or there's just somewhere where we're quite dissatisfied. I tell the story quite often of building this business back in 2012, where I was traveling the world and I could run the whole business from my laptop. And it was something that I dreamed of in my mind, but I had this feeling that something was missing. It was kind of this deep sense of unfulfillment, like the work that I was doing didn't really matter. And it was for the kind of people I didn't really care about. And it took me a long time to figure out why that happened, to figure out why I got everything that I thought I wanted, but I still wasn't happy, or I still had this feeling of unfulfillment. And I speak to creatives every single day who experience this. In fact, I just got off a call with one of my clients who's getting married this year. And this might not sound like it's related to business, but as you know, your life and your business is very intertwined. And I feel like when you figure out one area of your life, and it might be your personal life, it really helps you to figure out different areas of your business life as well. So during our coaching session, he was telling me that he's getting married this year. And he was basically asking me about how I make decisions. And he was saying that he knows his partner is the right partner for him and he really wants to get married, but he's having these feelings of, well, I'm never going to be with somebody else again. And that feels quite scary. I find myself thinking about other people or thinking about other relationships, and I'm not sure how to stop that, or is it normal? And so he'd gone quite a while with this idea that there was something wrong with him, or there was something wrong with the relationship, and he was kind of unsettled and unsatisfied. And so we dove into this problem, we dove into this idea. One of the first questions I asked him is, what would you get if you were able to just go and have a relationship with somebody else and it didn't damage the relationship? What would you get? And he said, oh, it would be exciting, or it'd be fresh and it would be new. And I said, okay, and what would that give you? And I started asking these questions. And what we got down to was this idea that he would have more excitement and more novelty. And so I said, great, now we've really got down to what you actually want. Because what I've realized is often we tell ourselves we want things like a new relationship, or we want to be able to build a business that we can run from anywhere in the world, but it's not that thing that we actually want. I often refer to this as the vehicle. It's not the vehicle that we actually want. What we want is the underlying emotion. And in this case, it was excitement and a feeling of novelty. And the reason this is important is because if we constantly chase the vehicles, we often get the vehicle through hard work and persistence, and we put a lot of time and energy and effort into that, but we still don't get the emotion, which I often refer to as a value, because the things we value are really emotional states. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But let's just think about them for now as vehicles and values. Like the vehicles are money, they are the relationship, they are whatever it is that we say that we want. And the value is the emotion underneath that, which is the thing that is how we feel. So what I realized in my life when I'd created this kind of scenario that looked incredible from the outside, I was snowboarding on a Tuesday afternoon in Canada, and all of my team were fully remote and I wasn't doing most of the work. I was kind of outsourcing that work to people. And I was able to just kind of live this life. For a lot of people, they were quite envious of that. And I used to get messages from people on Instagram saying how amazing my life was. And that made me feel guilty because inside I actually wasn't that happy. And I couldn't figure out, like, why do I have all the things that I thought I wanted, but I'm still not happy? And it's because I hadn't really spent time trying to work out what was the emotion behind the thing that I wanted. Now, this is really important in business for a few reasons. The first reason is so that we don't chase the wrong thing. But the second reason is that once you work out the emotion, it's often easier to get that emotion soon, like this week or this month, than it is to get the vehicle. And so it actually saves us a lot of time and it saves us a lot of energy. And so going back to the example of my client who wanted more novelty and excitement, I said to him, what would it be like if you sat down with your partner and you said, I've realized that something that's really, really important for me is novelty and excitement. And I'd love to brainstorm some ideas and think about some ways that we can bring more novelty and excitement into our relationship, right? And then ask your partner, like, what's important for you? What are some things that you want more of? And try and figure out what they are from an emotional perspective, right? And actually figure out, okay, cool. So now we know we want more novelty and excitement. It's not actually a new relationship that we want. It's not how do we get a relationship or how do we have an affair so that person doesn't find out. It's how do we inject more novelty and more excitement into our relationship. And sometimes they are really easy things to do. So you might be thinking, okay, but how does this relate to business? Well, there's actually lots of examples of how this relates to business because people often tell me they say things like, I just want more clients. Like if I just had more clients, then my life would, or my business would feel so much better. And so we dig down into that and I say, well, what would having more clients give you? I say, it would give me a feeling of security or knowing that I can pay the bills. Okay, great. So what you actually want is security, because if we just go after more clients, it might be that more clients is never enough. Like the next client isn't quite enough. And then it might be too many clients and then we get overwhelmed and stressed, or it might be the wrong clients. Right? So you say, oh, I just want more clients. Okay, so I have a magic wand and I wave that wand and I give you this random client. Are you going to be 100% happy? Well, probably not, because they have to be doing this and they have to understand the value of what we do and all of these things, right? So it's not quite as simple as just having more clients. But we often tell ourselves that on a daily basis. And then we have this narrative, if I just had more clients, if I just had more clients, if I just had more clients. And then we feel this disconnect between where we are now and where we actually want to be. But what we're actually craving is we're craving more security or more certainty. And so then we can start to ask ourselves a different question, which is, how do I create more certainty and more security in my business or in my life? And yeah, more clients might be one of the ways to do that, but is it the only way? Because more clients is often kind of out of your control, whereas sometimes there are some things that are within your control. For example, one of the exercises that I often get people to do when they come to me and they say, I'm feeling like I don't have the stability, or I'm feeling like I just need more clients, or I just need more money, or if I could just reach this financial goal, is I'll sit them down and I'll say, okay, what is the feeling? And when we get to the feeling, let's just say for this example, it's security. And I'll say, what are all the things that need to happen for you to feel secure? And they'll start saying things like, well, I just need to know that I can pay the bills, at least for the next 6 months. I just need to know that I can provide for my family. I'll say, okay, great. Let's sit down and let's do some calculations. How much do you have in savings right now? How much is your house worth? How much is your car worth? How much is some of the equipment you've got lying around here that if you had to sell it, you really could, right? And we start actually just going through and adding these things up and putting it down in front of them and realizing that not only can they pay the bills for 6 months, they could pay the bills for a year if they really had to. And they could support their family for the next 12 months if they didn't sign any clients, right? So it's like there's different ways to get these feelings that we're all after. And if you follow people like Tony Robbins and Richard Bandler and like some of the older generation of kind of life coaches and personal development, there is a theory that we all basically have very similar emotional needs, but they just have different priorities. So some people, the one thing that they want more than anything is a sense of security. And other people, like myself, the one thing that we want more than anything else is freedom, a feeling of being able to choose where you live in the world, a feeling of being able to choose who you spend your time with, what you're working on. And I know in my life, I get a feeling of disconnect or unfulfillment or stress or like something's not right when I don't have enough freedom. So when things are too dictated for me, where it's like, this is exactly what your week is going to look like, and you've got these calls with these people, and this happens here, and I don't have enough white space in my calendar, that starts to give me that feeling like I don't have my freedom, like I'm not actually choosing what I'm spending my time on. And now because I'm aware of that, I can say, okay, great. How can I get this feeling back of freedom? Well, I can actually just appreciate that I do have freedom. Like I've chosen most of these things in my calendar. I can start to be grateful for the opportunities that I have that are probably going to lead to more freedom, right? And I can even look at some of those things under the microscope and ask myself, like, are these things actually giving me more freedom, these things I've committed to? Because sometimes we do things, right? We get excited about an opportunity and we commit to something without really understanding the full picture and really taking into consideration whether we are going to get these emotional needs met. And so going back to this question that my client asked me, which was, how do I make these decisions? And how do I know if it's a good decision? And so I've got a bit of I know I recorded another episode about decision making, but this kind of ties into it, which is this kind of framework around decisions and why I think these ideas that I'm sharing with you today can really change how you feel about your business and your life. And I kind of decided that whenever I'm at a crossroads and I have to make a decision about something, which is a big decision, might be whether to keep a client or not, might be whether to end a relationship or not, might be whether to move to a certain country or a certain place, right? Quite big life decisions. I look at two things. Number one, I look at, is it in alignment with what I say I actually want? So if I say I really want this lifestyle where I get to live in several countries around the world throughout the year, and this decision keeps me in a particular country for most of the year, then that's probably not in alignment with what I want. Even if it seems like a really good decision, like a really good deal, like you're going to get paid this much and you're going to get to hang out with these people and blah, 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 blah. Like if freedom and that feeling of freedom and being able to choose where I live and where I spend my time is the number one thing for me, and I make a decision that is not in alignment with that, then that's not a good decision. So number one, is the decision in alignment with what I want? And I don't just mean the feeling, I also mean the kind of lifestyle and the kind of people I want to spend time with. And then the second thing is it in alignment with those other values? So obviously freedom is one, but we have more. Like I have security as a value or an emotional need, but it's just lower down on the spectrum. And so like taking into consideration some of those other values. And so knowing what your kind of top 4 or 5 emotional needs or values, those two words are interchangeable, what those top 4 or 5 emotional needs are and how you get them met is so important when you're thinking about making a decision. And I think we often try and make decisions logistically, and we're very stuck up here in the kind of logistical clouds. And that was the same for my client, right? He was thinking about, but I'm never going to be with another woman again and this and that. It was kind of between a rock and a hard place because there is no solution to that. There is no solution to, I'm going to marry this person, but I also want to date other women. Like those two things are in conflict with each other, right? So we get stuck in this conflict where we feel like we can't solve the problem. It's like an unsolvable puzzle. But if we come down into the emotion, then we're actually able to resolve it because the conflict wasn't created by the logistical stuff. The conflict wasn't created by him wanting to get married, but also wanting to have relationships with other people. That wasn't really what was creating the conflict. What was creating the conflict was he loves this person and wants to be in a relationship with them, but he's worried or is feeling a lack of excitement and novelty, right? So it's like that's a whole different problem that we're solving there, and it's way more solvable. There's like a million ways that you can look at solving that, especially as a couple together, right? So I know that's quite like a niched example, but I think it's so important because it's a powerful example, and I think it's something we probably all felt at various points in our life, having to make these kind of decisions and make these kind of commitments. So if there is an area of your life right now that you are not happy with or you feel conflicted in, see if you can get down below the logistics and into the emotions. Like, what is it that I actually want to feel? What is it that if I had this thing, it would actually give me from an emotional perspective? And start to get really clear on what some of those emotional needs are for you and what order they come in. Like, are you willing to sacrifice freedom for security? Or does security have to come after freedom always? Right. And one thing I will say is, like, throughout our lives, when we have these big decisions and when our life shifts and when we grow as people and we have different life events like having kids and getting married and parents dying and all of, and just all these life events, the order of these things can shift, right? Like once where we felt like we didn't need security because maybe we had it in the place that we lived or the person we were with, and then we get divorced or something and we feel totally unsettled, and then security becomes the number one thing that we want to try and get. And so what you're willing to do to feel that sense of security might be sacrificing some freedom, because that's the number one emotion that you're trying to experience right now. So I think it's always really important to try and work out what it is that we want to feel, not what it is that we just want to have or experience, right? So what is the emotion behind the goal? And so that's one of the exercises that I actually get to do with my clients, is going through and working out, like, what are these emotional needs? How do they want to feel day to day, week to week? Not just what do they want to achieve? How much money do they want? What kind of clients do they want to work with? Like, what is really important for them to feel emotionally? So maybe just spend some time and actually write this down. Have a think about some of the things that you want more of in your life, and then ask yourself, like, what is the emotion behind that? And if you're struggling to get to it, I always just keep asking myself, what will that give you? And what will that give you, until you get to something that feels like, oh yeah, that's the feeling. And also when you say it out loud, it is an emotion, it's not a thing. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that this has kind of shifted your perspective a little bit on your life and business. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, we make them weekly, so please hit the subscribe button. They aren't just solo episodes. I also have guests. If you have ideas for the show, things that you want to hear, then connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Matt Essam, spelled E-S-S-A-M. Connect with me on LinkedIn and drop me a message about some things that you'd like to hear or some guests that you would like to have on the show. You've been listening to Creative Courage. My name is Matt Essam. If you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe and share it with a friend.